Brad Blakeman is a former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush and former Democratic Pennsylvania Congressman Joe Sestak now join us. Brad and Joe, welcome.
Good to be with you, Eric.
Good to see you both.
Good to be with you.
Of course. Brad, let me start with you. This morning the president was on Meet the Press blaming Republicans. The Republicans fought what they call a lack of presidential leadership. Does this thing get solved in the next 48 hours? What do we do?
Well, no, it certainly doesn't get solved the way it should be solved because we still have generational debt. We have sequestration, which they tell me any bill that happens today will not deal with sequestration, which Lindsey Graham said right here on Fox. He got a call last night at 7:30 from the defense secretary, worried to death that sequestration is going to gut the military. So we're just kicking the can down the road, and Judgment Day is coming. There's no question about it. But the president, Eric, remember when he appointed that bipartisan Simpson-Bowles commission? They had tough love for us 2 years ago. They told the president exactly what we needed, not only on current spending, but future spending, on also debt reduction. But the president shelved it. We could have avoided this self-created crisis by the president leading 2 years ago and doing the tough love we needed then, and it would have saved the crisis now.
Joe, you're a former Navy admiral. You commanded a aircraft battleship group. You know the Pentagon by heart. As Brad says, could the president have avoided this through presidential leadership at the potential gut, as they claim, of the military?
Well, I think on the whole picture, both the president and Speaker Boehner had the best intentions of the United States economy at heart. I really believe that. They came within $500 billion, within the $2.5 trillion debt reduction that they wanted to have. They came that close and weren't able to pull it off. But now what both parties have to do is not hold up a mirror to each other, but to themselves. Stop the finger pointing and say, how do we resolve it? And frankly, the first step is the fiscal cliff. If we take $700 billion out of our economy over the next year, our gross domestic product will grind to a halt. We will actually have zero growth next year, which means a recession. So what they have to do now, and I know it's ridiculous to get to this point, but over the next few days, get that down to about $100 to $200 billion. Brad's spot on. We cannot afford these types of crazy cuts going across defense and domestic programs at this particular time. If we can get it below $200 billion, then what we can do is have a fiscal cliff, a gradual slope, so that, like a skier on a bunny slope, our economy, which is fragile, will continue to accelerate over 3% growth, which is predicted for the next year. Then what has to be done is step back, as Brad noted, and say Simpson-Bowles gave us a pretty good outline. $1 of tax revenues for every $2 of spending cuts, including entitlement reform. But, Eric, you're right. We have to have the political courage down in Washington, D.C. to make this work for Americans.
Well, how come we don't have that political courage?
Well, I don't know. My take is that having been in the Navy, the thing we most valued wasn't responsibility. It was accountability for those for whom you are responsible, willing to lose your job over doing what's right for them. And that's what we don't. Too many people want the authority, want the responsibility, but aren't worried to step up and do a principled compromise when they can't have it all their way and say this is what's needed to be done. Frankly, they don't generate the political will on either side. And I think, though, that the President and Speaker Boehner came closest to doing it twice over the past year, but they've got to do it all the way and be willing to be the bane of the respective bases if they have to do what's needed for America.
Brad, the Investors Business Daily had a scorching editorial against Congress, blaming Congress for this, saying we got here because individuals who comprise Congress have no skin in the game. The IBD says, for example, that the net worth of members of Congress has increased by 5%, while the average American has lost 39%. Do you agree with that? And how do we, as Joe says, get some courage on Capitol Hill and in the White House to maybe enact Simpson-Bowles and deal with our budget deficit and all the problems we have?
Well, Eric, in Washington, we have a lot of politicians, but we're light on statesmen and women. We need people who will accept the responsibility of making tough decisions and think about our future. I coined a new term. It's called being a momentarian. We live in the moment. Great societies provide for the moment, but plan for the future. There's no future. We're constantly crisis after crisis in the moment. And when we get the kind of leadership we need in America, we'll understand that we not only have to solve our problems today, but we have to look to the future. That's the kind of leadership we're going to need, is we have tough problems. No problem we have cannot be solved. The will to solve it is what we need, and the leadership and determination to do the right things now. Let's get politics out of the equation and let's get some leadership in and we can solve this thing. But what I think should happen today is not put a gun to legislators' heads. If the president wants to drive off the cliff, we shouldn't be in the car. What we should do is have a one-page bill today that keeps the status quo on spending, sequestration, and taxes for 90 days. Let's get a new Congress in there and let's solve the problems.
Brad, bottom line, that one-page bill, that's not going to happen. What do you think will happen in the next 48 hours?
Look, any Republican who votes for a bill, again, they're not able to read and digest, the CBO hasn't scored, is not worth voting on.
Joe?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is you'll see an outline of a deal coming over the next day. The details are going to be hammered down over the first week or two of January, and that's okay. Because if the Treasury Department knows that we are about to have some sort of a deal, and it's going to be a small deal, that they won't start the tax withholding that is about to go in 1 January. And also on defense, which you mentioned, Eric, that $50 billion that is supposed to take place, most of it is in procurement and research and development. Only 15% of that gets spent the first year.
What does that mean?
So
that
in a
it's
sense,
going to get
we
gutted?
have a little bit of time. And the deal that has to be done is very simple. Not $727 billion of tax increases and spending cuts. Get it below $200 billion. Our gross domestic product can continue to grow at about over 3%, and then we can accelerate. But Brad's spot on, as you are, Eric. If we don't come together by the end of February in a grand bargain again, where it's not party first, it's Americans first, and I think it's spending reductions with entitlement reform. The president took one step towards that. He needs to do more. Speaker Boehner took one step on the other dollar that were needed for every $2 of spending cut. Tax revenues, he's got to take another step more. We'll have the principle compromise. Americans don't care on the whole if you go left or right. They just want it to work pragmatically. And that's what's got to be done, like Simpson Bowles laid out, for the good of America.
Joe, do you think this president will really do that when it comes to spending?
Yes, because he has to. There is no choice. When entitlements are 60% of our budget and baby boomers are beginning to retire, or like Brad already have, just kidding, Brad, you know, what you have to do is understand we don't have a choice. And we can do it and still protect seniors. Look, President Reagan did do it in 1983. He changed the age. And it said it's not 65, it's going to be 67. But we have yet to get to that 67th year age. We did get to the 66, and a few years we get 67. You can do it in a way that doesn't harm the present generation of seniors, and second, salvages it for the future. But you can't do it, as most mainstream economists tell you, without revenues coming in. We do need to have a balanced approach to this. And those revenues, when over the last 50 years, Eric, that taxes for the wealthy, to pay their fair share, they have gone down almost 50% when you include federal, state, and local. And for the rest of the 99%, it stayed about flat. So that's why people are talking about a fair share.
Okay,
entitlement reform, spending cuts, $2, $1 tax revenue.
All right,
that's what both the leaders of the parties have to do.
Joe, let me get Brad in. Brad, as Joe says, do you think this president can actually take a page from President Reagan and he's going to actually deal with the spending?
It all depends if he turns into Bill Clinton or he remains as Barack Obama. Clinton was smart enough to understand that his legacy is what was important, and that he would be remembered as somebody who is good on the economy as a Democrat. And guess what? He wasn't a typical Democrat, and he was forced to change. A lot of it had to do with the fact that the Congress changed. Now we have divided government. If the president wants the same old, he's going to get it because the Republicans are not going to cave. It's equal branches of government. They control 2/3, we control 1, and it takes 3 to tango in Washington. Right. It takes the Senate, the House, and the White House.
Well, they're tangoing now. We'll see what happens. Joe and Brad, terrific debate.
Great to be with you both.
Insight. Thanks so much.
It's just a matter of who's leading in that tango right now. That's what we don't know. Well, right now.